Okay, Rupert, David Letterman hasn't been on CBS for years, yet his merchandise is still killing it. The only place that you can get official Letterman, Late Show with David Letterman merchandise is right here at the Hello Deli. How do people get this merchandise other than coming in here? Obviously, you want to come in here. If you're in New York,
Right.
come to the Ed Sullivan Theater, come to the Hello Deli, get yourself a Paul Schaefer sandwich or something else, and then buy some merchandise. If people can't make it to New York, what's the best way to get some of this merchandise?
Well, they can get on my website, hello-deli.com.
Yep.
And order it there.
Now, do you pack that yourself? Do you pack it, this merchandise, and send it off to people yourself?
I do.
Okay.
Yep.
If people ask you to add onions to the order, will you add onions to the order?
Absolutely.
That sounds great. The Hello Deli is the sponsor of the Letterman podcast. We are so grateful for that, Rupert. We're so grateful for you. And
My pleasure.
on a personal note, thank you for the years and years and years of entertainment that you have brought, not just America, I'm
Thank you.
Canadian, but brought the world. Thank you very, very much.
My pleasure. Thank you for watching.
Absolutely. Welcome once again to the Letterman podcast. My name is Mike Chisholm. Today's episode features John Filo. Now, John has a really great story. He's a photographer, but way more than that. And I mean, I'm going to let the episode play for itself, and you can get to know him and see how his story unfolds. But at the end of the day, I'm really excited about this because, when you have, this is a CBS photographer among many, many, many other things, but the link to Late Show with David Letterman, of course, is because he was a CBS photographer for a long time. And it was really cool getting to know John, but also getting to know the dynamic that he had. And he had a casualness in his gig with Late Show that a lot of people just didn't have. And there's a trust that goes into having somebody who, gets to take photos of the proceedings and is trusted with a camera in those areas. I just really appreciate the stories that John tells. His Les Moonves story is one that I'm just like, whoa, man, good story. And he's full of them. John is one of those people who a lot of people behind the scenes have said to me, oh, you want to talk to John? You want to talk to John at some point. And it seems to be no matter what area of the production we're talking about, from the actual production side of things, all the way up to the writers, to different people from all sorts of parts of the production have had really nice things to say about John. I can see why. You will certainly see why after this episode of the Letterman podcast concludes. We're going to bring up, of course, we have one sponsor of the Letterman podcast, and that is Rupert G and the Hello Deli. And I'm just so grateful that he is a friend. And lots of announcements coming as to the sale of the deli itself. But just appreciate Rupert very, very much. Actually, at the time of this broadcast, I'm in New York. It's a bit of a time travel through the magic of recorded video technology. I'm in New York, actually, at Rupert's retirement party as this airs. That's where I am right now. So I feel like next week's episode is going to have some neat things. And I just appreciate Rupert so much. I appreciate Rupert and May, the one and only sponsor of the Letterman podcast. Go to hello-deli.com if you want to get any Letterman merchandise, mugs, caps, shirts, and other things as well. Get it while you can. Go to hello-deli.com and grab the merch that you're looking for, and say a nice thing to Rupert when you order. The Letterman podcast, proud to present John Filo. John, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be part of the Letterman podcast today.
I was sanding my deck. Okay, I'm looking.
Is that
forward
okay?
To
Is that how you're filling your time these days? Lots of house stuff
today. Yes.
Thank you so much for taking time, man. Now, but to give everyone context, when did you start working for Late Show?
It was probably right after 9/11. Even though I had been working for CBS since '95,
Yeah.
And I think what happened is we had a hard time. I think the first show I ever covered was Dan Rather's interview with Dave Letterman after
Un
9/11. And after that, I worked with Lori Diamond, who was a great advocate for me.
Hmm.
And I think what happened, I was able. I, this was when Dave's life was getting a little more serious. I think he was, looking to be a little more adult. I mean, and I don't mean that in a weird way. I meant it seemed like the way we had it covered before
Yeah.
is that we'd send a photographer to the Late Show, and we didn't go every show. We went when there were some special guests, and then that film would be run over to the AP, and then inevitably, I think the AP editor would punch the goofiest picture they could find of Dave, and I think he was getting really tired of it. You know what I
Right.
mean? It was, and I don't blame him.
Yep.
I mean, because he always made great faces, but it was like it seemed like they edited for the face as opposed to uh, any moment or any content of the guest that he had on that particular show.
Yep.
So I think I was able to go over there and convince them. This is just as the transition from film to digital. That there was a 15-minute lab across the street, almost across the street on it was on 7th Avenue. Dave was on Broadway,
Yep.
and I could run over there with some film. Keep the guy would stay open. He'd run, print up the roll, and I could run back, and then we could go over the photos that we thought were appropriate, for
Right.
the guest and the show of that. What other things that happened in the show, whether it was stupid pet tricks or you know uh, bird callers, whatever, and then get it, and then be able to release the photo that way. In other words, show them I could to show the show I could we could exert some control over the images.
Right.
And so, and then that happened. That only lasted about 6 months, and then I was able to transition into digital. Show up with a laptop, download a card or two, and go over some photos, and then release it that way and send it. And that worked. I think that worked out to everyone's advantage. I mean, it just was. It made Dave happy, and it certainly made me happy. And it's sort of. I always enjoyed the show, so it was it was a great assignment. And you'd work your day, and then say,
Yeah.
"Oh boy, I'm going to go to the Late Show tonight." To get over there about 5:30, 5:30, unless there was some good music that I wanted to hear the rehearsals. It was a well put together show, and I always enjoyed covering it.
Man, just what you just said there, I've got, probably 8 questions coming from. Now let's go back to the beginning. At what point in your life did you become a photographer?
Oh, in high school.
Okay.
But it's at some point I left photojournalism I left it being a photojournalistic photographer in about 87. I went to Baltimore. I was getting married. We're going to have children, and I wanted a little more stability in a life to do that. And so I went and took a managerial job at the Baltimore Evening Sun. And then I think I was there about 2 years, and I got hired by Sports Illustrated they wanted a liaison between photo editors and the photographers. And I'd just love to do something like that. But then when I got there, they moved me from Baltimore to Jersey. My wife was still working in Philly, and I'd just get on the bus or train and go to New York. And then after that, that lasted only about a year, and that job never really came to fruition. Really, the liaison part.
So you
And
had higher hopes for Sports Illustrated than the reality of what the gig ended up being.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then I ended up going back to I think the Courier. I couldn't go back to the Inquirer because of a nepotism clause. And then I ended up going to their competition across the river. It was a Gannett paper. The Courier Post brought them into color.
Yep.
Ran the photo operation there and graphics, and then from there I went up to Newsweek as the Nation's editor. Hiring photographers, gathering images, gathering stills. and for the event. And then I had a big uh, uh, fight with the managing editor, and I ended up losing my job.
Yeah.
But we were about to have our second child,
Was it a
and
clash of opinions about things?
yeah, it
Yeah.
was basically it was over. It was the we had some images I got from a fireman that my wife stayed up late at night, would talk to this fireman. He was an instructor chief, and he had him. I noticed him in one of the newspapers. He had a camera around his neck, and that's why. And after talking to him for 3 nights in a row, he finally sent the film to us, and he said, "You're welcome to use the pictures, but do not use the first two pictures. They're pretty gruesome." And this was on the Oklahoma City bombing, right of
Oh
the.
boy.
And I said, and he explained to me, the picture was of a half burnt body, and it was horrific. Honestly, it was, figure a normal human being and then take that and slice it, vertically in half, and have a burnt sort of body. And he said,
Wow.
I shot that to show that you don't hit even though the body was still smoldering and smoking.
Yeah.
I shot that to show you don't hit that with a high pressure fire hose to knock out, you may knock out the dental records or the teeth and stuff like that. So
Oh.
so that was it. And then there were some other wonderful photos that he had shot, and they weren't as gruesome, but they told this wonderful story, the sort of the layer cake floors collapsed, literally blood oozing out of the floors, dripping onto the firemen's helmets. And
Oh my
it
God.
was just, it was subtle, but it was there.
Yeah.
And talking to the managing editor of Newsweek, he said, well, I want to see those first two pictures. And I said, well, here they are. And he goes, well, I want to use them. And I said, yeah, and I gave my word. And he said, well, I don't care. I want to use them. And I ripped the pictures up. I knew this was going to be, it ended up one of those nose to nose confrontations. I knew
Oh
I was
boy.
gone. I knew I was gone, but the bottom line is I gave my word. He didn't give his word, and Newsweek didn't give their word. So, um, as it turned out, from there, they kept me around. They said, well, you can work until your second child is born. And then my wife called the Washington Post, who was the owner of the Newsweek at the time, and wanted to talk to, oh my God, what's her name? That ran the Washington Post and she never got to her, but she got to her
I was
secretary.
gonna say the gal they made the movie about.
Yeah, like, come on, what was it? I mean,
I
this
know.
is horrible not
It's
to
blanking on
remember.
me too. I want to say Meryl. It wasn't Meryl.
No. This is oh God. Anyhow, all
Keep
I
going
know
with the
is
story. We'll
I
find
was
it.
working at Newsweek, and they said you can go home now, and we'll pay. You don't have to wait till your child's born. Just go home now. Go home now, and we'll pay you until I think 3 or 4 months work. And at that time, I applied to CBS. They were looking for a manager, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I mean, I'd gone through in about 4 years. I've gone through 3 jobs. So I said, I went and interviewed at CBS, and I really liked the folks at CBS. And they had, at that time, they had what they called a lab manager. The guy was going to retire. They had 13 labs that did all kind of work: black and white prints, color masters, color dupes, uh, color, things with captions on them, to send out
They
for
were loaded for
publicity.
bear.
Yeah, and I went, wow, okay. So I went and took that job, and then eventually started in '95 and started. You'd have to call and hire someone to do headshots and everything like that. And then finally, I just said, we have a little studio. I can do headshots. I can go back to my my roots as a photographer and start shooting. So that's how that happened. It just grew back into it after becoming a manager and doing various,
Yeah.
photo jobs, and I was working on imagination projects and new things about press gains and
Yep.
color, all kind of wonderful stuff like that, which is now sort of irrelevant, but spent a lot of time doing it. But it got back to shooting. I still ran the labs when we finally went to digital, that was my job. I think my job really at CBS was to take them into digital, and that's what happened.
Okay,
All
so
these,
Catherine Graham, by the way,
yes, Catherine.
there, yeah, and so that is a fascinating part of, something that I think that a lot of kids today don't even understand. They got their telephones and high resolution images at their fingertips at any time that they want them, that kind of a thing. You literally have seen the evolution of photography, and a lot of people who are purists or old school, they couldn't make the jump to digital. Did you embrace that early, kind of on your own, just as an enthusiast of the craft and kind of advancing the craft, or did it take a while for you to kind of embrace digital?
No, I embraced it. My short time at Sports Illustrated,
Yeah.
and working with, I should have made a list of names. He had a wonderful lab in LA, and he was one of our shooters, Richard Maxon. There's his name. And here's the deal. Japan was making big inroads into the film business in the United States with Fuji products.
Yep.
And it was beautiful film. I mean, Fujichrome was rivaling and besting Kodachrome, and so I remember Maxon arranged a thing where we had, I had other photographers. Well, that short year and a half I was at Sports Illustrated, we had photographers do a test, and Bill Epridge was kind enough to, take Kodachrome and shoot it against Fujichrome. And his dad was like in his 90s, and he had this old orange and white VW camper, and you looked at the Kodachrome and you say, oh, it's nice, and then you looked at the Fujichrome and you go, my God, his dad looks 10 years younger. The old orange and white Volkswagen camper looks brand new. I mean, the colors were just alive and sparkling. And I remember we went up to Kodak, and they were showing us CDs and digital, and you'd send your film in and it'd give you digital stuff back and all kind of stuff like that. And remember having a discussion, and you're talking to like a doctor, doctorate of chemistry, and you're saying, hey, you guys are in trouble. This film, this new Fuji film is something else. We go, well, ours is scientifically correct. And I said, ooh, here's the problem. I have a managing editor who could give a damn if it's scientifically correct. He just likes nice, crisp, clean colors and things like that. Matter of fact, when I was at Sports Illustrated, the managing editor goes, you'd have to keep your mouth shut and listen to arguments like, man, those West Coast photographers, this is fall football, their color is so much better and brighter and crisper. And you're going like, yeah, they're covering a game in Arizona. My guy's covering a rainstorm in Giant Stadium. It's and he was like raving about the wonderful color, from the West Coast. And you'd go, well, they have sun. Well, anyhow, that's the way the world went. That's the way the world went. And then what was happening is, remember I told you had 13 labs. Slowly, those labs were shutting down. You couldn't give away an email, a photo, in like year 2000. People, what? You want to send me a photo? That'll take up all my memory in my computer.
Exactly.
You can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do that.
Yep.
And I just said, you know what? This is going to be the future. And we were still doing chromes, and we were paying the AP to put out publicity photos of our various shows and things of that nature. And I just said, the whole world's going to go digital, and you can't do this. I mean, you can, and even the retouching was all going digital. There were people that
the rise of Photoshop and all of that. So that's all happening while your infancy at CBS is.
Yes, and so you still had people that could retouch negatives. Black and white negatives and some colored chromes and stuff. I mean, that was amazing stuff. It was like working with engravers. They were. And that cost a lot of money, and everything cost a lot of money. And of course, being corporate, everyone says, hey, is there a way you can reduce this? Is there a way you can reduce it? Yeah, we don't need to send out black and whites. We don't need to send out dupes. But, we can send out CDs with everything on it. And so that became a thing.
Yep.
Where every show had, a bunch of images from a show, had the music, it had, interviews with the stars.
Yep.
And so for a while there, that's the way publicity went. You sent out CDs, stuff like that. And then gradually, I mean, I still had photographers and they're still working. It said, oh, I'll be, dead and gone before I switch to digital, but they're all digital now. Some of them are still working. So,
Do you know Mark Carson?
No, I don't.
Mark Carson. Okay. So Mark Carson is the guy who used to assemble all of the bumpers for the original Late Night. So he's got a book out called Late Night Bumpers. So shout out to Mark Carson. The only reason I was going to say I brought him up is I'd love to get the two of you in a room. It would be very interesting to hear you two talk shop about what you've seen in your careers and where you've gone from. Maybe that's one that we can combine one day on the Letterman podcast, because it's a couple of different eras there. So as that's happening, you're convincing CBS to go digital, but before you go to the Late Show, what were some of the things that you did for CBS? What was there an average? There probably wasn't an average day for you at that point when you were working just for CBS. Was there?
Well, there's seasonal work.
Okay.
And what do I mean by that? Okay, you always have shows on the air, and you always have people requesting photos. And there's some people that say, I need prints. Some people say, I need chromes. Some people would say, I need both.
Yeah.
And then there's some people, and now all of a sudden, every once in a while, you get someone to say, listen, I work for a newspaper group. I'll take a digital file if you have it. And you go, what? Wow, this is great. So that's how that eventually started. Your original question, let me see. How much of course am I? Yeah, no, the whole thing is, it was a slow process, but even inside CBS, you still had people wanting to do it the old way.
Yep.
I mean, literally, we had work orders that had 6 carbons. 6 carbons. I mean, can you imagine how hard you have to write with a ballpoint pen? You'd keep a set.
That's hard. You're making 6 copies.
Yeah. Please take this frame number. And every frame was black and white, chrome, whatever way. Anytime it came into our system, it got a unique number.
Yeah.
Right. And so you say, please take this number and frame number 12 and make it into, please retouch the wrinkles under the bags under the eyes and nose hairs and ear hairs. And can you do that? And you'd have this whole form, and then it would come back, and someone would say, they didn't trim the hair or something, so send it back. There was just tremendous back and forth of real artistic kind of things going on, and finally you said, you can do this by phone with someone that has a digital file. They just call it up on their screen and go zip, with Photoshop and things like that. So that was part of it. Part of it was not just taking them, but you had to convince people that this was a better way to go. And I come from the standpoint, I used to mix a lot of chemistry, right, when I was in college, and that stuff was pretty toxic when you get into the color end of it. And you go, man, anytime I can cut down how much crap I pour down the drain, why? That's got to be a good thing. It's got to be a good thing. I mean, someone said, well, it's used to build computers and this and that. And you go, yeah, but we're not talking, hundreds of gallons of stuff going down the drain all the time. So, there was always that. I mean, and not only are you transitioning, but the work itself is transitioning. The retouching labs, the place where you sent your film, they're all transitioning into digital. And now my last digital assignment, which was a year ago for Blue Bloods, you just download it to a thing called DF Studio, and someone somewhere looks at the 4,000 images you sent, and says, okay, thank you very much. We'll put out for that episode, we'll put out, X number of photos or whatever. But that's the way it goes now. But before, it was just, a lot of light tables, a lot of loops, a lot of film, a lot of chrome, then trying to read negative. I remember going into color negative. People couldn't, you had to buy a machine that converted the negative into a TV image, corrected color. And you had people that couldn't read like I said, negative stuff. So there was a lot of learning, a lot of, a lot of bringing everyone along, you know. And that was fun. That was fun and educational, and there was always a battle, but it was done in. There was no one really mad about it. It was just, it's change, and
Yeah,
no one liked change, So
that's right. Yeah.
so they look at you and they go, "Oh, there's the guy with the change," always wants to change things. So, um,
But
but
that's the guy you
as
want.
your budget
That's the guy you want
goes,
working for you though, right? Like you want the guy who is ready to innovate and is okay to change, because at the end of the day, especially when it comes to the line of technology, it's all changing every day. And if you can find somebody who can embrace that and roll
oh
with
yeah,
those changes, that's who you want
oh,
working
and
for you.
and not only that, but we started to hire people that knew way more than I'd ever know. That were coming
Sure.
out of out of the art schools and photo schools, and you go, yeah, that you guys are amazing. You can, that we had guys that were, I mean, you're not hiring just a picture editor. The next thing you're hiring is someone that's you're expert in the computers. What are we going to use? What are we going to use when we go on the road? Uh, what do you think we should have in it? What are the software things we have? What are the licenses we need to get? So it became a whole different. It became a whole new world, and it was a good new world. You were hiring people out of school, and you'd chuckle, and then you'd say to people, who are trying to correct things, overcorrecting, you say, you know what? Let the newspapers correct it. They know what they need to do to that image, that color image.
Yep.
Because of their presses, I used to have little classes and tell them about press gain and ink gains, and you really can't, give someone a really dark image, that they can't make it lighter.
Yep.
Yeah, we explain. I tried to bring where the pictures were being used, and now that it's all mostly video,
Yep.
when it was being printed, that was one thing, but now it's all monitor color, so that everything is pretty, pretty well established. If you got your monitors, calibrated, everything is good.
Yep.
But that was the thing, where people, you could see that happening too. People arguing, the retouchers looking at their computer, which is a high grade, super duper monitor, and they're
Yep.
talking to an editor. It's looking at, at some corporate computer that someone got a, bargain on. You're going like, don't be arguing back and forth about the color,
Yeah.
unless your monitors are in sync or, the same monitor, and they're both been calibrated. And so, yeah, you got into all these little things, but it didn't, it wasn't like it had to happen overnight. It was a slow transition, I'd say, of about 5 years at least.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we had Tom Young on here recently, audio guy, talking about the different audio advances, and he was there when they bought all the microphones, and they upgraded the Ed Sullivan Theater. He was there when they did that, and he talked about how the fact that there was basically kind of an unlimited budget for whatever technology you needed. You could buy the best stuff. Would you say that was an accurate representation of for the photography wing of CBS as well?
Well, here's the deal: is if I don't know if you remember, but you have a digital camera,
Yeah.
and I swear within 2 years it was obsolete.
Oh, yeah.
So you'd have to
It
go
was
to
all about
an
megapixels back
account.
then. Everyone loved the
Yeah,
megapixels.
you'd have to go to the accounting department and say, well, wait a minute. When we bought cameras before digital, these things lasted 20 years, 25
Absolutely.
years.
Yep.
You had Leicas, and what do you mean you need another camera? And you go, well, we don't need lenses, but we need we need a better camera. It's faster, better. And you go, well, my God, we had you on a 6-year or 5-year depreciation. You go, sorry,
Yeah.
it's just the way it's going. And so that was always, luckily, I was a nice guy. I mean, in terms of, and people, I didn't piss a lot of people off at CBS. So
Yep.
it was pulling teeth, but we always got the cameras, so that was nice. That was a nice way to do it. And we got what we needed, but you'd have to make a logical argument and just say,
Yep.
look, this this is the way it's going. Uh, yeah, and it's like anything when there is a transition, it's just that's what people don't understand. Like, what do you mean? You're going from a typewriter to a laptop, so well, why do you need a new laptop? And you go, well, there's things like storage and how much software we can put in there to deal with photos, and it was all it was an argument all over again. But it was you're dealing with corporate minds, and so you had to go in. You can't just say I need this. You had to go in and make a logical argument to do that. And then when you had someone like Dave Letterman or someone saying, "Hey, the show says they need it, and we need this is how it's happening. We're doing an immediate thing." Before the audience leaves, we're maybe already getting a picture out. Things like that. So it was fun. I mean, it was never this was never going to happen. You could see where you had to make your argument. You'd make your reasonable presentation and hope for the best.
And you
so,
get what you want.
Yeah.
Okay, so
and then
I'm
it
curious.
didn't. It would start with someone like Dave.
Yeah.
And then if you were doing well with Dave, then someone like my boss would find out I was doing okay, and he'd go, "Wow, we always thought he was a difficult guy, and you're getting along with him." And I go, "Yeah, I mean, I'm getting along with the show. I'm not getting along with Dave. I'm getting along with the show. And why? Because we're taking care of him. We're doing what you'd like to have done, and things like that." So I think the one thing that sort of transported me from just another schlub in the great context of CBS. Do you recall when Dave almost left? There was big talk of Dave was going to go to ABC.
Going to ABC, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I knew nothing about it. I go to the show a couple times a week, and this became an explosive issue. We had a new head. Les Moonves was running everything, and he had no idea that his contract. No one informed Les that Dave's contract was about to expire.
Yeah.
For the Late Show, and not only that, he didn't just have the Late Show. He had the Late Show.
Absolutely, he had 2 hours.
Yeah, he had 2 hours of a time, and I remember going over there, and someone in Dave's office said to me, "Well, what's happening at CBS?" I go, "Well, things are on fire. They're really concerned, about all this is going on." And I said, "I'm not involved in any of these discussions.
Nope.
I'm just a
scuttlebutt, though. You're just talking about the scuttlebutt.
Yeah, I'm a scuttlebutt guy. I'm just saying, yeah, everyone's like concerned." So it was Dave's main person that said to me, she said, as I was leaving, we picked some pictures. She says, I was leaving, she says, "Look, Dave's enjoying this. It's fun. He thinks it's funny, but he's like most of us. He doesn't want to go anywhere. He likes it here. Doesn't want to move." And I went, "Oh, that's nice to hear."
Mm-hmm.
And it made me feel good. And I went back into the office, and as I'm walking back into my office to move these pictures that we've got from the show, I run into our head, my boss. He says, "Well, where are you?" And I said, "This is late now. This is like 6:30, 7 o'clock." He's still in the office. I guess he just came down from the big floor, with the bosses. Like, what are we going to do?
Yeah. This is at the broadcast center, right?
Yeah, no, this is at 50 Rock. This is at Rock. Not, what am I saying? 50 Rock. This is at the Black Rock.
Okay. Yeah.
I worked at AP. It was 30 Rock at.
Okay, gotcha.
Anyhow, this is at 52nd Street. A few blocks from the Late Show Theater, and I just said, "Oh yeah," and he goes, "Well, did you hear anything at the show?" And I go, "Well, the way I understand it, I don't think Dave's going anywhere." And he grabbed me and he goes, "Come with me." I go, "Well, I got to move pictures. Come with me." And all of a sudden, I'm in the elevator. We're up in front of We're up in front of Les Moonves.
Are you
Tell him what
kidding
you
me?
told me. No, tell him what you told me. And I said, I don't think Dave's going anywhere. He goes, what makes you say that? And I said, well, this is what I heard. And this is who said it to me. And they went, thanks. And from that day forward, I think they sent Dave a motorcycle, and then they found out that Dave wasn't leaving. And from that day forward, I had access to the 35th floor. I was,
Wow.
Les Moonves would see me and say, hello, John. And I'd say, hello, Les. It's like, come on,
That's
you know,
bonkers.
yeah, no, it is. And that sort of, that put me in a place of, I don't know. It just, no one screwed with me. Lower down, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess not. That's an incredible story.
Yeah, that's what put me on the map. It was Dave, not anything I had done so far for CBS, even though I thought I was doing good stuff for them. But that's that's how that happened. And so I got along great. I got along great with the Late Show, and I got along great with CBS, and it was the best 25 years of my life. It really was.
And at the end of the day too, like when you think about it, like those were we try and talk about this on the show here, how unique of a situation it was that Worldwide Pants, the production company, and how much power and clout they had over their 2 hours that they had, and on CBS's network. Now, CBS essentially is the host for
Right.
these people who get to make these unprecedented decisions, ownership, the whole 9 yards. And here you are, technically an employee of CBS. This is, I love talking about this stuff and getting to the minutia of this with people, because you were a CBS employee that cross-pollinated with the Pants crew. And
Right.
it wasn't always that they got along, but there are certain people like yourself. I think about Vinny Favale. There are certain people that beautifully, walked in both worlds.
Yeah, no, it was great. I never was treated so great. Anytime I did anything for Worldwide Pants, it was always first class. There's just no other way to describe it,
Yeah.
And I had a tremendous fun. I mean, I had tremendous fun shooting that show. I had tremendous. There were shows I'd look forward to. The Christmas show every year, I mean, there's just things that I whether we wanted it or not, I'd be at the show. I mean, you just couldn't miss. You couldn't miss. Darling Love. You couldn't miss. Yeah, you couldn't miss the Christmas show. You know what I mean? And that thing grew and grew and grew. But I've always loved that show. And
I've got
it
some
was a tremendous
snowflakes.
show.
These are some snowflakes from the very last Christmas show. some of the snow that Glenn Borders and his team helped make fall during Darlene Love's last performance.
Yeah, no,
okay, so
they always had to fly the saxophonist too. They had to fly the saxophonist into the scene. That was good. It was great. Yeah, that was and Paul Schaefer did an amazing thing. It was just all the orchestration, all the chorus, the choirs, everything. It was
Yep.
amazing. That show just grew and grew and grew. It was pretty fabulous.
So, okay, you said you didn't have to be at the show every day, but you enjoyed going to the show, and I'm super curious about your job, because you talk about how you were certainly on the technical end, making sure that things are photos are exactly presented the way they wanted to be, but you're also the shooter. What was the majority of your day? Was it the behind the scenes with the photos themselves, or was it taking the photos?
Well, we had many other shows. We had a whole
but that's
news
what I'm
division.
saying. Like, I'm super curious as to how you're.
Oh yeah, you'd be over.
You didn't have an average day, did you, John?
No, you'd be over doing. Sometimes you'd be doing 60-minute stuff, or 48 hours, or just the morning show. I mean, when Chris Lick started the new. I think while I was in 25 years, I think I went through. I should really add it up. I'm guessing at least four or five permutations of the early show. a
Right.
morning show.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And it went from the broadcast center to the building on 57th Street, and then back. Now it's on the 1515 Broadway.
Yep.
But it was all that. It was always a relaunch, a remake, a redo.
Yep.
And you'd be part of that, and you'd be part of whatever was filming in the city, and like the shows. I mean, you'd be called in to do the many shows that were filming in the city for us, and that took off. I mean, that was, and then pilot season. There's I don't think there's a pilot season anymore, but there used to be. Boy, and from
Yep.
like end of February, April, man, you could have 4 pilots being filmed in Manhattan,
Yep.
and you'd just be working long days, jumping, staying with the pilot, and there was really no hours on the pilots. They'd just film until everyone dropped, basically,
How does
start
that
all over
work?
again. And
What time does your day normally start? Like, what time do you hit your office typically?
it used to be around 9:30, 10,
Okay.
but I'd
And
be
you'd have
there
a
late.
list of
I
things
always
on your
work late.
desk to do then?
With that?
You'd
What's
have a
that?
list of things on your desk to do at that
No,
point there?
no, we were more like a firehouse.
Oh, no kidding.
No, you had an idea what we were going to do. People would call up and say, "Hey, so and so's coming in from Europe. One of our newsmen. Can you get him a headshot?" Yeah. Hey, can they run over to 52nd Street? We have a studio. I'll be glad to meet him. Or if not, can you come over here? And then you try to make a makeshift studio. So we had a makeshift studio in the PR department with news. Richard Huff's office would throw up something.
Yep.
And do things like that, and then run back and then do something in the studio, at 50 Rock, or I mean, if I call it 50 Rock,
At Black Rock.
Black Rock at
Yeah.
52nd Street, and you do all that, and I mean, there were reality shows, there were things that were coming into town. You'd have to pack up and go. Well, we did the Super Bowls, we did. I didn't go, but we were at one time. We had the tennis tournament. We had football. Sometimes do Jets Giants and do the guys in the booth. So you were working on the weekend sometimes. I mean, I loved
Did you
covering
do the
sports.
Masters?
No, never did the Masters.
Okay.
Never
Yeah.
did the Masters. I think we did. I don't think I did very much golf. We did something up in New York or somewhere, but nothing. No big.
Yeah.
No big. They'd come in, and you had basketball season. You had your
Yeah.
different. They have different seminars. You bring all your announcers in, and then sometimes you have to get new headshots of the announcers or new headshots of the. There was a lot of work. There's always lots of work. So that wasn't a problem. It really wasn't a problem. You were not in the field doing news. You were doing most of the headshots, most of the background things, or if they brought in a special guest or things like that, or if they did some special report, you'd get involved with sometimes 48 hours or 60 minutes to do something really, really wonderful and nice, and you'd have to go out on location with them. But that was always fun.
Yep.
And then what was nice about it, a lot of budgets started getting cut, of different shows. And it was nice to have, which meant you couldn't hire big names and big productions and studios around Manhattan to do it. So we were always playing catch as catch can, where we would make up studios. We shot on Dave's stage a couple of times. We shot, we shot anywhere we could that was on CBS property, and we could throw up a backdrop and bring in some lights. So there was always work. There was always a problem. There was always something going on, and there were shows that were in development. There were shows that were guns were always an issue. You'd have all these police shows, and it's like have to that send you out for gun battles, and we don't want to put out any pictures of people holding guns or pointing guns. So you say, why did you send on the day when there's a gun battle? Or something. Just the usual. It got into the usual. What was good and what wasn't. There was, you had a big PR group, and you had a big PR consciousness, of
Yep.
what you can do and not do. And and that was always a battle. You just sit there and scratch your head and say, it's like, I don't know if you remember in newspapers, anytime there was an airplane crash, they canceled all the airline advertising.
Yep.
It was a thing. So anytime, there and gun violence was happening, like, please, let's not be the part of promoting guns, in this culture, so it would be like, okay, I'll do what I can do, so you'd have to go to shows, and sometimes shooting was against your instincts. What was a good shot? You're like, well, they'll never use that because the guy's pointing a gun right at someone's head, or something like that. And you say, all right, so I'll shoot it, but we'll know it's going to be something else than them running up an alley or something like that. So yeah, you always had that. You always had that problem, and it changed. It varied. It varied with, uh, uh, who was the boss and who was doing things or
Yeah.
whatever. So you always were aware of it, and there was always someone trying to do. Um, Shows had pods. Where you had to get, how are we going to promote this show and how are we going to do that, and sometimes we'd go back to just a certain group, promoting the show. So going to the Late Show, being it was its own entity, was always
Yep.
a relief. It was like, uh, they have their own mindset, they have their own way of doing things, and they're happy to see me, and I'm happy to be there. So
It was an
it was
oasis.
yeah, you never got into a conflict at the Late Show. I mean, you know what I mean? It was always, um, you were always welcomed. I don't know how else to say it better, but it was just it was so nice to go to some place and say, hey, come on in,
Yep.
have a good time, get some good pictures, come on, so you do that. And
Well, let's get
yeah,
to
and
that a
it
little
just
bit.
grew
Where would you stand? So shows
right behind the
beginning.
monitor, right behind the monitor that Dave looked at. And it was a big old thing because at one time it had an old cathode ray tube,
Yeah,
television in it. Now it has a
absolutely.
digital thing. So there was this big box.
Yep.
And I think one time someone tipped it over, and about I think 12 headsets fell out of it, that all the production assistants had around the show. And you go like, what if, it's just people just threw things in there, like that they might need, extra bad. But I stood mainly behind that because um, that gave me a safe space between the number one camera, usually like Dave Dorset was on it,
Yep.
and then the other two cameras. And so no one was really behind the monitor. So that was like my uh, coaching position, for first base or whatever, so that
And you
worked
had
out
carte
well.
blanche. Anytime you wanted to take a photo of anything you wanted while things were going on, you could.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like, and you just tried not to be on camera, because sometimes they'd do things with the audience and the cameras would spin and you'd duck,
Sure.
and then you'd stay behind the camera guy, you stay
Well, with
one of the
Tony,
camera
like I
guys.
think about Tony during the monologue, you must have been right close to Mendez.
Yeah, we didn't go out we didn't do much on the monologue. We didn't get on the stage until the
Until
show
the desk.
started. Dave went to the desk. Yeah,
Right.
it was just too. The monologue was done in a different place, and you'd have to be in the aisle or the
Yep.
audience, and it would distract. It was a distraction.
Yeah.
He's reading the cue cards, so you just didn't. We didn't do that. We when he went to the desk is when we went behind the monitor, because you were there. You weren't there for just Dave. You were there for the guest, and that's why you were there. Whoever the guest was, Don Rickles, De Niro, or whoever famous star was coming out, or author, or whoever the guest was,
Yep.
comedian. And that's why you're there. You weren't there, for the monologue. So,
Um,
but you enjoyed it. You were in the back,
yeah.
and when everything changed, you went up to your. There was a rhythm to the show, and
Yeah.
that show was well run. That show was absolutely amazing to see how, after so many years, that thing just started at boom 5:30 and it was done. Well, maybe it'd go 10-20 minutes if there was something funny going on
Sure.
a little late, but it was like, man, and they knew how much time they had to cut, and they had to make the uplink at a certain time to get it to distribution. And it was just an amazing to be a part of that show and see everyone work and do their job. Man, it was great. I mean, it was really, I mean, everyone was super professional on that show. I mean, I just did. That's why I think I enjoyed it. It was just like, you felt like you were part of this Swiss watch, you know?
Yeah.
It's great
Oh,
team. It was
gears in a
clicking
watch. I
along.
love that analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. And then sometimes you'd catch you by surprise. You didn't know if how Dave wanted to play certain things. I mean, there were a couple of times he came in, wanted to use the camera, and we did. We worked
Mhm.
that out. I think he shot Annie Leibovitz with it. And the first picture was totally out of focus. The second picture was in, and I had to like, I don't go on auto, so I had to really make the camera switch it back to all the stuff for Dave,
Yep.
and I said, if you hit the button, it'll focus. Just give it a moment, and I think his, I think he liked the picture of her out of focus, and then the next one was in focus that he shot. So he liked both those photos. So I think he has them now.
Oh,
Whatever.
that is
So
cool. We got to find
yeah,
that made air obviously as well, right?
yeah, I did. It was great. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was great.
we got to get Don or
Yeah, and
Walter on that.
that dragged me in. That dragged me in the show every once in a while to make David get some bogus award, from the Buick dealers of East Coast. It'd be some kind of goofy trophy, and with a big check or something. And I'd have to come in and make a flash or two. I had to bring a flash that day. And you know
Oh,
pretend that
that's interesting.
yeah,
Okay,
and had to
so they'd use you for bits as, but the true
yeah, not that
photographer.
many. I think I was maybe in two or three in all those years. So it wasn't it was fun. It was always
Yeah.
fun to do. And I always looked like an idiot. I had a vest on, and I looked like a, typical goofy photographer. So it worked out well. And I'd run into other late show people. Like, you go to the Super Bowl, you'd run into Biff or someone down there doing a segment, and then Dave was always big on getting the winning quarterback
Yep.
back to the show. So they have these elaborate things to do, even if it wasn't our Super Bowl. You'd a jet plane arriving in Teterboro, and then a transport over to the Late Show, and then
Yep.
the appearance of the quarterback. Yeah, it was always fun. It was always fun. And then I think every year I look forward to doing the group shot. The Late Show
Really.
group shot. Yeah,
Yep.
we'd do it on the roof, and
Yep.
then that got condemned because the roof couldn't hold the whole crew or something, and
Yep.
I don't know, and then we did. I think one time we did it on Broadway. One time we did it on 53rd Street. A couple
Yep.
times I think we did it on 53rd Street. So
There's a few on the
and then
stage as well.
then we did a lot on the stages. So
Yep.
and it was just this amorphous thing. No one would listen to your direction. Like, can you all get to? They just park themselves anywhere they wanted, and then Dave would show up. Boom, would do like 4 or 5 frames, and it'd be over.
Yeah.
It'd be great. So it was fun. It was total fun. It was a lot of
I don't
fun.
know if you can see it back there, but the CBS, a lot of people call it the yearbook. I just love that. The book I'm talking about. Can you see it?
No,
I'll grab it. I just don't want to take Dave's bridge down while I do it.
no, no. Yeah.
I wonder how many of
Oh,
the photos in this book are you?
well, probably a lot of them came from video too. They did little
Yeah.
frame grabs. I remember that book. I think so. I think, when you consider we didn't do every show, and there were a lot of things that we didn't have a photographer at, like at the Drew Barrymore flashing or something. I don't know that we had that, but there were a few things. Yeah, a lot of them were made from video. So we didn't, in the scheme of things, we really didn't cover that many shows, maybe 1 or 2 a week. It's just the way that's the way it played out. Um, uh, so or we never had a chance to wear out our welcome.
Ah.
So that was yeah, it was sort of as needed. We'd get over
Yeah.
there, and it was so easy to go over there. It was only literally a 5-minute walk,
Yeah.
from the office to the Late Show. And that's why my hours were like late. I'd work, 10 to in the evening,
Yeah.
to take in the Late Show. That was always on my schedule, hopefully. And there were a few of us, Jeff Staub, who liked shooting the show too, he'd do it if I couldn't or something like that.
He was another CBS guy on the
The
roster.
CBS guy, and he was a great guy. He was not only a good, he was a guy we relied on all our computer tech, and he was a great retoucher, and he was a good shooter.
Yeah.
He came from I think I want to say Pratt. I hope I got that right. The art school. He was great artist. He's a good shooter, good artist, good retoucher. I mean, man, he was the guy. He was the package. That was the package you hired at the new CBS. This guy could do it all. Shoot, edit, assign.
Mm-hmm.
Read his shows. I mean, every editor probably had 3 or 4 shows at least. So they had to read all the scripts,
Yeah.
come up with a shoot date, a date for the someone to go shoot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'd end up, if it wasn't Late Show, I think later on I liked doing a lot of Blue Bloods. Blue Bloods is another great show
Yeah.
in terms of the treatment of you, and what I got, one thing I don't know a whole lot about entertainment, but what I do know about shows is the show takes on the personality of the biggest star. And if that star is a wonderful, neat person, that production is sort of a good, neat thing. And I found it both true with Late Show and with Blue Bloods. And I was always welcomed at both places, Even after I got retired from CBS, Blue Bloods got me back for a season or two, which I thought was really nice of them to do that. But yeah, I love shooting. I mean, shooting is just great, and shooting entertainment is shooting. And there are a lot of wonderful memories from the Late Show.
I
And
want to
I
hear
think I think one of my favorite pictures. I mean, there are a lot of
yeah.
there were a lot of pictures, but I think you'd get pulled into things during the commercial breaks. The one show I remember was Denzel Washington with Don Rickles, right? And Don was sort of sitting between Dave and Denzel, and he refused to talk to Dave. He kept talking to Denzel, and he turned to Dave and said, "This guy can take me places and do something for me. The typical Rickles." And so I'm just, you're photographing this because it's hilarious, and the hard part was trying to shoot because you're laughing so hard. And I remember a couple of times I had tears in my heart. Joan Rivers was another one I couldn't. I'm glad I had a camera in front of my face because I was just laughing so damn hard. She'd say some stuff. But going back to the Rickles and Denzel
Yeah.
stops and goes during commercial break. Goes, hey, can you get me a picture? Can you get me a picture of Rickles? And you go, of course. So he leans in and Rickles leans, and they shoot the picture and gave it to the handler and I guess they got it to Denzel. But it was, and then I think one of Rickles' last performances on the Late Show. There were a lot of performances on the Late Show, and he just looked at me and gave me a little wave, like goodbye, and that had to be a couple years before his death.
Yeah. Oh,
and,
yeah.
And maybe not even that long. And I love that picture. He's just looking right at me and giving me a little wave as he's being. He had to be helped off. He had to be helped off the stage.
Yeah.
He was not that mobile. But I love that picture. That's one of my favorites. So.
Do you look through your pictures very often?
I do. There's some keepers. There was I think one of the early pictures I had, it was Dave and Hillary having an eyeball standoff that I just love. They're just looking at each other, she's got contempt and so does he, looking at each other. But there were a lot of good stuff. There was a lot of stuff happening at that. I mean, the Tina Fey stuff where she basically stripped and, had
at the very end, her very last.
At the very end. Yeah. Yep. Like I don't have to wear that. I'm glad your show's over. I don't have to do this anymore. Wear the suits and the constrictions. There was just funny. There was a lot. I mean, and to see all that, to be at Dave's last show, it was just so wonderful. I mean, it was just so wonderful. and that whole week, or that whole, the going, you just didn't want to miss any show. You just
The
didn't want
6
to miss
weeks.
any show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you read Last Days of Letterman?
No.
I highly recommend it. You will love this book. It's an oral history just by the staff. Scott
Mm-hmm.
Ryan basically corrals all the staff and does a bunch of interviews with them, and all they do is they talk about the last 6 weeks, and it goes through everything in that last 6 weeks, which many of us maintain being, the greatest, the greatest end of a run of any
Oh yeah.
show ever.
Oh, it was amazing.
Yep.
Absolutely amazing. It was just, I couldn't, you just you just couldn't wait, for the next show. I mean,
Yeah.
it was that good. I mean, one nice thing I was able to do, I just love that show so much, The Late Show, that when I did find out that there would be no more,
Yeah.
I put out a little notice to all the staffers that I'd give them headshots. I'd shoot their headshot for free as they look for other work, their jobs. So I think I'm doing close to, I want to say 80 people, around there.
Wow.
Yeah, just a little retouching, a little quick headshot, and something they can have on their resume, or
Yeah.
whatever.
That's really, really
So
sweet, John.
yeah, it was. I loved every one of those people. They were just so good to me, and I'd make them laugh. They'd make me laugh. They'd be afraid to go up to Dave's desk during the intermission. I go up there, go up, talk to him, go talk to him. You get a picture. You want a picture of you and Dave? And they go, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. And I knew they couldn't. I mean, I'm gigging them, you know, and so, but there was everyone at that show that I knew, that needed, there were especially the young people that were looking for going to other jobs,
Yep.
like, I hope they helped them out, I'm glad they had something. So that was nice. It was nice. It was fun to do. It was fun to do. I just had a tremendous time doing The Late Show. I've never been to a place where it was so open and welcome. Yeah.
Can we
It was
talk
just
music for a second?
Sure.
Where would you be during the musical performances, and what were some musical performances that stand out to you?
Oh, I'd have to go in the back, because some of the camera work,
Okay. So you'd be
they were
backstage. You wouldn't be getting any of the shots of the musicians?
no, no, no. What I'd do is I'd come to, if there was a musical group I liked, I'd go to the rehearsal,
Ah, there
and
you go.
that was the thing to see, because they'd play the song not once, not twice, but maybe three times to get all
Yep.
the miking correct, and all the volume set for each
Yep.
instrument. But and the music performances were just great, and rarely did we get a request for musical performance. I mean, you'd shoot something like that. To my dismay, I wish I would have shot more of that just for archive purposes.
Absolutely.
But there was no need. I mean, who did you not see on that stage? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It was always amazing. I think there were a couple of shows that were really big to me. I was like, I think when Levon Helm did one of his last shows there, and
Yep.
things of that nature, and so it was really so. It was just nice to witness all that. I mean, we always loved the music. The music was always great on that show. I mean,
Yep.
and not only that, but it played well too. I mean, when it aired, man, that music was great. Yeah,
Yep.
they had some wonderful, wonderful sound people. They really did.
Yep.
I mean, they were first rate. You just couldn't. I mean, yeah, I think about that, and just listening to, just to see them take a 5-piece band, and then check every instrument, and then check, make sure. And man, when they played it during the show, that was it. You know, they just nailed it.
Yep.
I mean, the musicians nailed it. The show nailed it. It was fantastic. It was fantastic to watch and listen to. Yeah.
Couple of the moments musical moments that I thought you might have been more of a part of. Paul McCartney on the marquee. I assume that you had some things to do
Yeah,
that day.
no, we were there. Yeah, I mean, there was so much I mean, you're thinking like, okay, that was, a lot of people want, yeah, Paul McCartney on the marquee, but the thing I remember is Philippe Petit walking across Broadway on a tightrope.
Oh, great
The Late
pull.
Show
Yes.
got me some kind of room in some hotel somewhere, where I was able to photograph that of him.
Oh,
I was
very
higher than he
cool.
was, photographing, looking down on Broadway and him walking a cable. Right. That's the thing I remember. I mean, yeah, McCartney on the marquee, sure, that's great,
Sure.
and all that stuff. But I remember that kind of stuff of just weird, you know, getting Philippe Petit walking for the Late Show, walking across the cable on Broadway, and then there were the fireworks, and it was just crazy stuff,
All the
just
fireworks.
wonderful,
That's a good one.
wonderful thing.
Well,
Yeah.
so anytime that they would close down 53rd Street for a late show stunt, I guess that would be something that you'd be there for as
Well,
well.
it's sometimes. I mean, there was sometimes where you had a vantage point. Like when they do the leaping dogs, it wasn't. It was really hard um, to get something like that. Sometimes then to do weird stuff like with the skiing or whatever they do. But a lot of it, there's. I'll tell you what, shooting a show like that, you do realize there's a moment for video and there's a moment for stills, and some things just don't work. It's stills like. I do remember Vinny Testaverde kicking field goals from a roof somewhere. I'm up, I'm in a hatch, getting up to a roof, and I'm just have enough room to put the camera up of Testaverde kicking balls down 53rd Street.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I mean, Joe Namath. Here's Joe Namath, right? Guy from my neck of the woods in Western PA. And you go, oh, Joe, they're going to take him on to 53rd Street. He's going to throw some footballs. You go, oh, all right. Man, you put a football in Joe Namath's hand and you see this guy go from whatever guy he is
Yep.
to this live, wonderful quarterback. I
Yep.
mean, I'm sorry. It's the miracle of here, put this in your hand. It's like zoom. It's like he changes features, he changes the looks, expressions.
It's
And he's
Superman putting the
flinging, he's
costume on.
flinging,
That's what that is.
and he's flinging his football down 53rd Street. And you're going,
Yep.
oh my God, to see something like this. And then I think we had we're hitting baseballs. I mean, come on, we had McEnroe with tennis rackets and
I was going to say the Williams,
trying to break
Venus
a window,
Williams with.
trying to break a window of the
Yeah.
neighbors.
Yeah.
Come on, it was all kind of weird stuff. And then, yeah, it was just wonderful stuff. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Yeah, the long stuff I don't remember too much. Like I say, it makes better videos. But just seeing Big Pappy, smacking some baseballs, or Joe Namath flinging a football. I mean, you say, yeah, that's the memory I'll have. And it's not the memory of him just throwing the ball. It's what the ball did in his hands to his personality. I don't know if it's a hard thing to explain.
No, I think
But
that's why you're a photographer. I think those are the types of things that us who don't have the eye for it. I think that's the type of stuff that you see and that you notice, and when you do, that's when how to document that moment.
yeah, no,
With the
it
visual
was
means.
just. I mean, it was magical. It really was. It was magic.
Yeah.
There were a lot of magical moments at that Late Show. I mean, even with McCartney and Ringo coming back to the stage, the Ed Sullivan stage, and the ability to. And I remember there's a plaque on the wall that if I had the right f-stop, I could pick up that plaque
Oh,
that had Ed Sullivan, in the way in the background,
yeah.
and little things like that. The history of that theater, and then little things of the elephant trusses underneath the stage when they used to have the circus acts on the Ed Sullivan Show, things
Yeah.
like that that had to be put in place. Yeah, that theater had a soul, and I think the Late Show fulfilled that even more.
Yes.
It was just with a lot of great people coming back.
Those are big words, because at the end of the day, when you look at the body of work of Ed Sullivan,
Right.
the namesake of the theater, the television history, which of course, even my generation, I'm 47 at the time of this recording, and I mean, Ed Sullivan don't get me wrong, there's reverence there for sure, but I didn't see a lot of those moments live, but I still have that reverence, my parents and different things, the events. We
What
lost you.
happened?
Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, I can hear you still.
I don't know what happened. I
I
just
don't know what
moved the
happened either.
phone. I don't know why it did that. It
I
refused
don't
to.
know either, but I still got you here. There we go. You're back. Perfect.
You know what? There's a little, my finger hit a little thing that said stop the video or something.
Oh, there we go. Perfect.
My mistake. I'm sorry.
No. We're good. We're good. And I'm going to keep it in too. I love little moments like this. Just like Dave loved the little moments, the screw up moments. Sometimes that makes for a better show sometimes.
Oh, I mean, there were so many of those, the Lyle the intern. Oh, come on.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
you
want
couldn't
him
move
on
that
here
picture
so
because
badly as a guest.
no one really
Yes.
wanted that picture, but to witness that acting done by well, come on, what's his name? Here I am with names
We'll
again.
get it. We'll get it. You keep going. We'll get it.
But Lyle the intern used to just keep me in stitches, and consider that guy was just playing it off the cuff, just making it up as he goes along, and Dave would just be beside himself with Lyle the intern.
Jimmy Simpson.
Yeah, Jimmy Simpson.
Or
God damn.
Jody Ebert, when he would come in and tell Dave to
Yeah.
you to him and F you. Oh,
Yeah.
we've had him on the show. He is
No, Jimmy Simpson. That's the guy. I just loved it. I loved him, and he'd do that. He'd do that walk away that was just so goofy. I mean, it was so.
Yeah,
It was just so icky. It'd be like, God,
totally.
this guy is great. And
the
the
look at
funny
Paul
part
on
is
the way out too.
my boss had just seen him in a theater production of about the guy that invented color television or something. It was a Farnsworth thing, and she says, "That's him." I said, "Yeah, it's Jimmy Simpson, man. He's just great." So,
Any Alan Coulter stories?
Oh, I loved Alan Coulter. He was the best.
Yep.
I did his headshots, and Big Red, man. He just
absolutely.
He was always, and he nicest guy. My God, nice guy. He'd always come over to you, put his arm around you after the show, something like that, or see you. How you doing? You just loved Alan Coulter. Man, he was great. And I loved him, the bits he did, and he did his heart and soul in that, his bits in terms of, come on, the Shawshank Redemption thing is just hilarious. You familiar with that one? Where
Yeah, he had to escape the theater.
He escapes the theater to get hit by a cab. Right? It's great. It's great. It's just wonderful stuff. I mean, I don't know, the writing.
You never took any pictures on remotes, though, did you? Like when they were filming a pre-tape like that, they wouldn't call you in to document that at all, would they?
No, like I said, some of that is better video than stills, and it didn't involve a star. Like I remember All the Noise. I think one of the other favorite show was, do you remember? I don't know if the way they built up the Oprah thing. My God, that was. And the amazing thing is I'd be there behind that monitor, and out of nowhere, like someone like Oprah turned to you, "You're getting a lot of good stuff." You go, yeah. Like, when the guest would notice you and then ask you a question, it would be, okay, it's things you weren't expecting, you weren't. So you remember, stuff like that, like the Denzel and Oprah and a few other folks, and Don Rickles. And
you weren't there for the Super Bowl commercial, were you?
No, that was big secret stuff, man. That was super secret. That was.
But there are stills from it, so that's where I didn't know if the stills just came from the video itself or if they had.
No, that would someone would do it with a little point and shoot digital.
Gotcha.
But then there's so many of those, like, oh, we should have brought you in on that. We should have brought you in on that, and you go, no one wanted to do it at the time.
Yeah.
And you realize, that's a big secret. That's a hell of a well-kept secret, and it was, until it aired. It was good stuff. I mean, we should have brought you. I get it, but you'd love to be there, but it's not my show.
So, John,
I call you.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And you're part of a machine, and in your case, you're part of kind of two machines. Um, when Late Show went off the air, you stayed on with CBS for another seven, for 5 years anyway. Um,
Yeah.
and Blue Bloods, one of the projects you worked on. What other projects did you work on after Late Show finished
Well,
its run?
we transitioned to the New Late Show with Colbert, but then they
Yeah,
wanted a photographer every night. So that really that was tough. So we ended up having to I hired someone to be their photographer. So that was good. In other
yeah,
words, we had to work a deal where uh, the show paid for part of them, the production paid for part of them, and we paid for part of them.
gotcha.
And they could have one, because they really wanted every day, every day, every day, and they had a different take on what they wanted out of their photographer. They wanted stuff for, uh, I think their web feeds and things like that. So,
Yeah,
pre-tapes and things. So that was good. Otherwise, that would have you would have been just living over there
I was
doing
just
one
gonna say
show.
it would be a full-time gig.
Yeah. So meanwhile, all we're doing is news. Things are always in the end. There was always change. Things were always changing. You're always trying to, you're looking at things. You're seeing other networks folding up their photo department. And so you're worried about that. Will that happen to us? In the scheme of things, will photo go away? Will
Yep,
publicity go away? Will it become a contractual thing with some people?
yep,
Um, so you'd see that. You saw that fold up at ABC. You saw the real big cutbacks at NBC.
yep.
So you wondered at CBS. So yeah, when they asked you to cut, you really had to cut. And so would mainly stay with the shows that we had. Luckily, we had a lot of shows going on in New York.
Yeah.
It was good, and you could get in a cab and go cover one somewhere, or do something like that. So, and then we still had news. We still had a
Of
strong
course.
news division.
Yep.
And then that, as things changed, they wanted less news, more streaming.
Yep.
I don't, and that's about the time I left, when in the COVID and everything else. And so there's somewhere there between streaming and still wanting to have a network. So it's a tough gig now.
Everything's
It-
evolving. Um,
yes.
you
I
know,
mean, the people I knew at NBC they were staffers. Now they're no longer staffers.
yeah,
They were, they'll, if they want them to do a show, they'll come back as contract workers or something like that. So,
yeah,
yeah, I'm glad. To be honest with you, I'm glad to be gone because it all is changing, and I think it's a move towards video. I mean, the
yep,
still image was born by magazines and newspapers.
yep.
And it's really hard. Everyone, if you have something on the internet, you want a piece of video. You don't a single photo doesn't carry it much anymore.
Well, it's
You know.
still you get that's all the clicks, and they want to keep the eyeballs on a page for so long. It still will only keep you there so long, but a video will keep you there longer, right? So
Right.
there's business behind
Yeah.
it as well, and um,
Yes. No,
I
and
just
not only
think
that,
back.
but
Go ahead.
the business digitally has changed. Now you have cameras that shoot 30 frames a second. That's six
Yeah.
more than the movie camera. Come
Yep.
on, it's like the decisive moment. Your training is to get something, and the way you studied people and their reactions, and it's not that necessary anymore. It's in there somewhere. I just got to go find it. It's
Yeah.
I so yeah, we're inundating people with images rather than. I mean, when I started out working for the Associated Press, like, boy, you were lucky to get two images, one for the afternoon and one for the morning
Yep.
papers. And then that's the way you thought. You thought about how can I get everything into one image? But now it's a bygone era, and I'm
I've
bygone
got one
myself.
more question here for you, and then if we want to finish up with another memory or two, or maybe even go back to that first night. That's crazy that your first night was shooting Dan Rather after 9/11. That was an unbelievable moment. The only other question I have is I had when I told somebody that you were coming on, so they want to know about just ownership of photos, because you have taken all of these crazy, behind the scenes or these moments, these photos that you have, like the Blue Bloods, for example. There's some gunplay. You've got a shot of Tom Selleck maybe with a gun or something, where it's an amazing shot. It didn't get used anywhere. You have all of the photos that you have shot over your,
No,
3-4 decade career.
no, they belong to who you work for.
Okay. But
they're in an archive somewhere. I don't have any right to them, other than if I wanted to show someone that's my work. I can't do anything with them other than, hey, I did shoot that, and this is the kind of work I do. But when you work for someone, you don't own it. They own it. The CBS owns it. And in theory, the Late Show stuff, like we were talking about, stuff from there, it's a hard, even if you say CBS doesn't own it, well, then the Late Show owns it.
Right.
It's part of their copyright. It's part of their show. It's part of what they've copyrighted, and you're taking a sliver out of that copyright. Right. So
but they could
I don't
theoretically be in your possession to use in a portfolio of your own work or things like that as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's some wonderful things I've done that I just, and I would have never done if I didn't work for CBS. Like we used to go down and do the Kennedy Center honors. I used to do the graduation, the class picture, of all the recipients. We did it at the state dinner, the night before the show, and
did you do Dave's?
Yeah, we did. Dave's.
That's the night that was after the fact, or maybe it was the Twain Prize that was after the fact. But yeah, I'm
talking about the Kennedy Center that aired on CBS. On Christopher Holidays. I just love that. There's just so much talent running around. But to do the class photo, I felt very honored to do that. I felt very privileged to do that. I mean, even though
was the president in that
it
photo?
had nothing to do with me. It is the fact that I was a CBS employee.
Absolutely. The president was in that photo.
New. Sometimes, well, when Hillary was the Secretary of State, it's the Secretary of State's dinner.
Yeah.
And Bill would come, and on his way to the bathroom, he'd come over to hey, I think Jeff Staub and I were standing there in our tuxedos, and he'd come over, hey, these boys probably want a picture of me, with me, and we'd go, okay, yes. What are you going to say? No? And so that would happen, we'd get, but I know the president would show up at the Kennedy Center. He had a booth. Yes. He had a separate thing. And I remember shooting him and her. I mean, the last president I shot there was Obama.
Yep.
Because Trump never went and all that. So, but that was wonderful. And I knew Obama's photographer, Pete Souza. He used to be, when I was in Kansas City, he was my stringer in K-State. He was going to grad school.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. So he was always, Pete was always, when Obama showed up on the Late Show, right? Pete got me a couple of tags, you wear on your lapel as let Secret Service know you're
okay.
The White House photographer. I'm okay. And one of that was at Cronkite's funeral, and it was great. And then Pete did that for me. And then when Obama was on the Late Show, Pete showed up, and Pete got married at the White House, and Brandi Carlile sang at Pete's wedding at the White House, and Brandi Carlile was on the Late Show the night Obama was on. So Pete was with me. So I got Pete to be with me behind the monitor, to shoot the Late Show. And then after the show ended, Obama went around and shook hands with everybody. And I went, and I could see him coming towards me. And I'm like, wow, what am I going to say to the president? And I put out my hand, and I started to say something, and he goes, I know all about you.
Oh,
just shook my hand and moved on. Like I don't want to hear it. It was, and I looked at Pete, and Pete was laughing so hard. He was laughing, that was his gig to me. It was his little joke on me, and it was funny. It was very funny. Obama was great. It was Obama
The
does
very
today.
definition of a diplomatic statesman.
Yeah, it
I
was
say that
great.
as a Canadian who, very much appreciated how he presented himself, I guess this is the best place to finish off right here. Any stories like that with Dave that come to mind before we close her up for this time?
Well, the only thing I can say about Dave is he's a terrible photo subject. He is. I mean, he'll admit it. I mean, and if you get him to do something,
Yeah.
he can only maybe you can get 2 frames before he just gets this goofy expression. It's about the best way to describe it. He starts staring at you, or
The grin, the kind of,
yeah, he does something weird, and it's like,
yeah,
Dave, here I am, boom, shoot it. Dave, here I am, boom, and you shoot 2 frames and you move on. And if you don't get it in those 2 frames, you you could spend days, and he'll never let you do that. Trying to get it. And most of my job behind that monitor was trying to get pictures of Dave that he could use as a headshot.
Yeah.
And we got a couple, but it was so hard because he didn't want to pose for a picture. He did not want to pose for a headshot photo. And so there were a couple times where he had to have his picture taken, when he had his race cars, and he had to, they had a new driver, or, the race team was in town, or he needed to do this. And so Dave says, well, I need a new picture. I need a new picture for, I don't know if it was I don't even know if it was I think it was a passport. And I remember talking to Lori. Now, Lori Diamond is the one that saved my butt and made me king in CBS by telling me that Dave would probably not, it's like everybody else, doesn't want to go anywhere and just is enjoying the fun of ABC, CBS, and anybody else trying to figure out if they're going to get the Late Show. She said, Dave doesn't like any of that photo talk. Look this way, baby. Or I said, number one, I never do that. I'm not that kind of guy. And she says, and he doesn't like, don't say I'm going to take 3 pictures and shoot 12.
Right.
And he says, and she said, so all I'm hearing is I got to be done with him before he's done with me. So I remember we went in and we did the headshot for the passport, and I got it on the first one. I go, that's it. We got it. It's good. Because I'm looking at it in digital camera, and he goes, what? I said, he said, you don't want to take another one? I go, okay, all right. Since you asked, we'll take another one. The bottom line is, and I think that happened early on, and I think that helped me, only because he knew I wasn't going to, overwork what was needed. I said, it's a passport photo, right? You got to be looking straight ahead at me, everything, eyes open.
And don't smile, so that makes it even easier for him.
No cigar. You can't use the cigar in your mouth when he was smoking, and you can't use a cigar. They'll never accept. And I said, I got it. We got it. I think I had 1 or 2 frames, and I said, we got it. And he goes, no, he refused to believe that we had it. So that made me feel good. So we shot like 2 more, but that's the way, that's the Dave. That was Dave. And I knew it, and he knew it. And that's the way we operated from then on.
Yeah.
It was never, there was never a prolonged photo shoot with Dave.
John, I just can't thank you enough. I'll hit stop here. I'm going to do a little quick outro. I'll hit stop, and then we can say our goodbye privately, but I just can't thank you enough for taking time to come and relive some of these memories. You have a standing invite. Anytime if you and I want to get together and think of 5 or 6 moments that you ever want to talk about from Late Show, to get it out there, I would love to have you back on. I just appreciate the caliber of person that you are. The quality of your work is unbelievable. And thank you so much for taking time out of your day sanding to come on the Letterman podcast.
Oh, it was a pleasure, and thanks for this jog down memory lane. And they were all great, and they were all good. And I'm missing a lot of great stuff, but it was a great show to cover, and I just looked forward to it every time I wanted to go or had to go. And the nice part about it, I could actually go without having having a reason to go, which I found to be really wonderful.
Yeah, there's nothing better than that. Well,
Yeah.
Anytime you can figure out a way to get to one of the most groundbreaking fun shows of all time, and you had a kind of a standing invite, that is a very, very, very rare thing. There weren't very many people that had that.
Yeah, I mean, you could go down to the director's room, I mean, with Jerry Foley and just hang out, hear the scuttlebutt of, what's going on, what isn't going on. It was great. It was a great, great show to cover. And I'm glad I had that opportunity. I'm glad they let me do that.
So are we.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. He is John
Well, thank
Filo.
you.
This has been the Letterman podcast with Mike Chisholm. Coincidentally,
Next time I want hair and makeup.
Thank you and good night.
Overcoat and underpants.